People get, what is Brazil? Has Brazil got wine? Does Brazil have people that are studying wine? Does Brazil actually get interested about wine?
Actually, people start to get attention about Brazil. I think one of the reasons it was because the things you and lots of the other key people
Yeah,
in
no,
Brazil.
well, try to change the mentality in terms of how to talk about wine. I mean, we even with WCT, we changed completely the models. We needed to kind of make it a way that Brazilians would engage with the classes.
That's why I want to come back. That's why I wanted to do some things with Brazil, just because I feel like there it's gonna happen. Have that feeling. You see me, we're moving faster.
Some people say the cultural aspects that Brazil doesn't have the culture of drinking wine. So New Zealand didn't have in the 70s or in the 60s. The Chileans probably was not high consuming country as well. The culture you build up, but you have to have access. The people that wine.com is talking to, Evino is talking to, Ambev is talking to, that mass of people, they are not into the language. And how we communicate with them, how wines of the US, wines of Australia, wines of South Africa, wines of Italy, you speak with that sort of database. You need a translator, you need a communicator, and that's why these companies have been playing a very big part on that sort of base scenario. I'm investing a lot in marketing, having a strong marketing team here to be able to deliver brand plans, to be able to do wine events, masterclasses, wine trainings, wine dinners, wine trips. So easy. In 4 hours, I'm in Santiago, quite close to Buenos Aires, quite close to Mendoza. So it's hard to go to Australia, but it's not hard to do events.
Hi everyone, I am here with Paulo Brammer. Actually, we're in different time zones. I'm in Australia, and Paulo Brammer is actually in Brazil. Such a far away, but everyone is actually following the podcast and following me on the social media knows like how much I love the wine industry in Brazil, how much we have it done over there, and I want to is actually have it's doing it still. And I wanted to ask you, Paulo Brammer. It's actually like very well known person in Brazil because you have done so many things, not just in Brazil, outside of Brazil, because you study your career in UK. And we wanted to start from there. So you Brazilian, of course, but you went to UK and how everything started. Tell a little bit about your
Correct.
story.
Correct. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I think your work it's been absolutely incredible. I think it's really good to see the way we're talking about wine. Trying to look beyond, trying to build a community and help each others and helping people to overcome problems and try to oversee as well issues that we might need to encounter not only in Australia, but also in Brazil and the rest of the world. So it's a pleasure to be here, and we're going to have a lovely chat. So yeah, I've been working with wine for quite a long time now. I'm more than I think 21 years now exactly working with wine. I started my career in the UK. You're absolutely correct. So I don't come from a background where my family used to be around wine or produced wine when they're kids. It's just everything started in the UK. I was in a period that I was going to spend about short period in the UK for about 2 years to learn the language and also to do an international law course, a specialization in international law. So to get a life going, I need to get some work, and I end up in a restaurant, as you do, as a foreigner does most of the time, with a different language. And I was lucky to start in a very high-end restaurant. There was a restaurant really kind of when the UK was really starting to attract chefs from around the world, and the gastronomy in London was starting to get really serious. This was literally after the 90s and early 2000, when the food in the UK was starting to see like quite a serious field, not because of the raw ingredients there necessarily, and not because of the English chefs, but because of the foreign chefs who were coming down and really kind of to improving the industry. So I end up in a restaurant in Aldwych in central London, where the chef was French, and the food was really kind of like high end. And I started really as a barback, and then a dispense bartender. I couldn't speak with customers. My English wasn't good enough. And then I started doing wine courses and literally got absolutely hooked. Completely follow for the history. I mean, wine is a lot of sciences together, so that's why it brings so many people around. I mean, it's not only the chemical part, the biology part, the physical part, the geography, the history, so the politics and the social inclusion. I mean, there's so much thing involved that you might follow for one of them. And I think I follow for more than one. So I was really into history, I was really into geography, and obviously I like drinking. So I started. I was an easy target, I guess, and basically I think England or London was a really it's really meritocracy. So it's a kind of place that you really put an effort on. You really spend energy and time and dedication. You kind of grow quite fast. So at least for me was that example. I remember when I started. If I can remember, because it was a while ago, we had a lot of Italians and Polish people and Danish and from all around the world. And I remember I was 20, I was early 20s. And I don't know, I got, so on my break time, on my evening time, I was between books, English, learning the language, but also learning wine. So, and I remember a lot of friends, they used to go to parks and play football and stuff like that. And I kind of like, I started to grow quite quickly on a scheme of wine waiter and then wine sommelier and then head sommelier. So in 2 years' time, I was in charge of a really good, there was a 3 Michelin star chef from Montpellier. They opened a restaurant in London, and I was in charge of the wine list, and which was focused on the Languedoc, Roussillon, and Val d'Honne. So it was fantastic. I mean, the food was outstanding, and I think that's where everything started. So this was 2005, I think, and so from then on, I went to study diploma. So I did WSET diploma. I graduated in 2011. And at that time I was more in a sort of executive role in a group of restaurants, bars, and I was about 5 years down the line, and I kind of like finally decided that I want to get back home. So my time in London was kind of expired in terms of willing. I kind of like I was missing family, and I wanted something else. I thought I was in a ceiling in terms of a job, like I was a head buyer. I was moving from buyer to buyer, so I wanted to do something different. And obviously the family thing really kind of like also play a big part on it. And but before I moved, and I think that was an important strategy in terms of moving. UK it's a very mature market. UK it's one of the most important wine markets in the world. Not only the most important, but also one of the oldest. So it's very mature. It's very professional. So for me, just to move from the UK back to Brazil without a connection or without leaving behind something that I could be connected with would be maybe stupid, but also careless. So before I moving back, I kind of like I signed a consultancy deal with the group that I was. So I had to go back every twice a year just to look into the wine list, the training process, the GP, the profit P&Ls and stuff like that. And also I became judge for the Cantor Wine Awards and the International Wine and Spirits competition. So I could have this feeling, and since then I keep coming back on and off. So it's a good thing that I'm still connected with the UK. But yeah, I mean, it's since then I kind of like moved back to Brazil, where I am now, 9 o'clock in the morning, where there is probably 10 p.m. I think, is it?
Yes, 9:48, but it's because we are in like I'm late, not in Sydney, so that's.
Oh, I see. I see. Thank you so much for making easier for me and harder for you. Sorry for that.
That's so good. It's a perfect time.
Yeah. So, and then in 2013, I decided to move back to Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
where I decided to start my own business, which was an education business. Was an education business based on WSET courses. So, and started really kind of small, family-run business, 2, 3 people operating in the business, and literally became really big operation in terms of as a wine education, became quite large in terms of numbers. We became sort of one of the biggest operators the biggest operator in Latin America. But we managed to kind of put Brazil in the map. Brazil was far behind in terms of numbers in WSET, and in 7 years, Brazil became top 10 in numbers of students. We were operating in the whole of Brazil, so in 18, well, I think it was 18 or 19 states, like 2,000, 3,000 students a year, all levels. We managed to get diploma holding certificates, the only one in Latin America. We were awarded the Global Operator of the Year, which was to me as a huge achievement because, I mean, imagine at that time there was about 800 schools in the world. And I think that's we mentioned a little bit before we started here. The people get, what is Brazil? Does Brazil got wine? Does Brazil have people that are studying wine? Does Brazil actually get interested about wine? And we were very small numbers. So when everyone kind of like, I remember like from one of the things that I will always remember. So we were on the on WCT diploma, when they do the certificates, they have like in the Giddens Hall, like it's a beautiful theatre in central London. Jancis Robinson is there, Stephen Spurrier is there, Gerard Basset was there. So like all the superstars. It was like the Oscars. Like you got even the red carpet thing, and so you get there, and people like try to announcing the nominees, and they get like, oh yeah, the guys from Brazil, and then what, Brazil is good, and suddenly you are like, you are named, you are awarded the Global Educator of the Year, and everyone's like, what? So it was really interesting, like the reaction from everyone saying like, wow, okay, well, Brazil has got. It's got something. So I think that's something really nice of what you do and what a lot of other people do to kind of like putting Brazil in the map in terms of, yes, we do have wine. We are a little bit behind in terms of consumption, but it's got lots to do. And then after doing all these 10 years with education, I then decided to move a little bit further, and I sold part of the business, and I then joined one of my favorite suppliers when I used to be wine buyer in the UK. I used to buy from Berkman Wine Cellars. Berkman Wine Cellars was they are now the fourth biggest importer in the UK. It's a large company now, but I kind of like follow through the growth with Rupert Berkman, who was a son of Joseph, who launched Berkman in 1964, so it's 60 years today, this year. And so when I was deciding to move away, I called Rupert and say, look, I'm thinking of doing something else, and he said like, well, just join the team, come in, and why don't you be partner in Brazil? So I joined. That was exactly 1 year ago. Big move, big operation. I mean, massive. When I was in education, I think I spoke to you before. Like when I was in education, I thought like everything was about education, was everything about WCT, everything about what I was doing. And then moving away, a little bit away and getting out of the bubble, I'm kind of like, wow, there's so much that I have to do still. There's so much that I can do. There's so much that we, as a community, we can grow. And I also do a little other stuff, like I do some content for Wines of Chile. I do some consultancy for Ambev, which is a massive beer company in Brazil. I help them a little bit as a mentorship in terms of training in wines, and as well a winery in São Paulo, which is I help them out as well. So it's a complex day. It's a busy life at the moment, but I'm really enjoying, and it's again, I mean, I love this kind of chats because there's so much to do. There's so much to achieve. and Brazil, it's a place that really can grow, and there is a lot of potential here. There's a lot of things to be done, but it's not going to be as fast as everybody thinks it will be.
Yeah.
So I keep reading stuff that people saying like Brazil is the next big thing. It's got potential, but it will probably take a little bit longer than it should. But mostly because of taxation. I think taxation is what really kind of hold us back. And I think that's me at the moment. I mean, so yeah,
Emerging markets, I guess, it's have the same kind of problem, because India the same. Everyone say India. I talk with Sonal Holland. It's another podcast we have, and then she said the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just, but for me, I think you're gonna agree with that. If there's not a challenge, everyone else already have done that thing before. It's always having. You need, that's what we call visionaries, because you just visionary how you see Brazil, and it started in Brazil like 10 years ago. And with wine education, people didn't even know what it was about. And people, it was completely blind, attentive to big business in Brazil. In the wine could work, it could not work back then, like. And then for me, you just was a big visionary, because it's like, you're going for London, where you have like a big wine culture. You have your stable job. It's like, I want to go back home. I'm going to open my business. And you just, did it. And you did so well. So you actually became Brazil. Actually, people start to get attention about Brazil. I think one of the reasons it was because the things you and lots of the other key people
yeah,
in
no,
Brazil
the whole. Yeah,
support Brazil.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The whole team. I mean, we had a fantastic team at the school and Cultura. I mean, it was a lot of efforts everyone put in, and I think we did. You're right. I mean, I think we tried to change the mentality in terms of how to talk about wine. I mean, we even with WCT, we changed completely the models. We had to kind of like we call tropicalization.
Yeah.
We needed to kind of make it a way that Brazilians would engage with the classes. And the same thing with Berkman. I think we're changing a lot of things. I mean, I'm lucky to have a Berkman in the UK, which has got 60 years experience.
Wow.
Obviously, we have lovely importers in Brazil, such as Mistral, World Wine. I mean, they are in the game for a long time, like more than 20 years. But I think for me to have the school that the UK gives me, 60 years of wine importing and working with their own trade and having that sort of schooling, it's so good for me. So I can go there, learn, and try to apply in Brazil, whatever I can apply. And you're right, you mentioned India. I mean, I like Sona as well. Sona is fantastic professional. I mean, I think she's the only, she was the first for sure Master of Wine in India. And she's a great speaker. She really engages people. And I think India has exactly the same things that Brazil has. I mean, for us to have an idea, Brazil is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the 16th biggest wine consumer in the world, but is the 5th biggest adult population in the world. So, I mean, it's so much room, so much potential for growth with so many people. And I think India is exactly the same issues. The population is massive, and they are probably the top 15 or top 20 consumers in the world. But there was a research quite recent from IWSR that it points out that Brazil is the only country on the top 20 consumers in the world that is drinking more now than compared to 2017, which is good to see. I mean, I guess we all experiencing the sort of structural decrease of consumption, with the baby boomers drinking less, with the younger generation drinking less, with so many attacks about heavy alcohol consumption. That it is. That's why when they look at this number, they look, Brazil is going to be. We have been being quite a lot of pressure recently from producers, especially from Argentina and Chile, try to getting all the volumes they are stuck in with in the Chinese market and in the UK market, which are heavily decreasing, and they're looking at us saying, "Oh, I'm going to throw everything in here." because we grow in it. But in fact, we don't have this consumption yet. I mean, the consumption is still very tiny. We're talking about 450 million liters a year. A year, it's tiny. It's a tiny,
Yeah.
tiny little thing. I mean, we have this number of 2.7 liters per person in consumption. This number have switched very little from 10 years to now. What has happened is we have started just for the listeners to understand a little bit of Brazilian market. So we have 2.7 liters per person per year, but the majority of this consumption is hybrid wines. So the history of Brazilian wines is based on hybrids, so not vinifera. So, but vinifera is growing quite heavily in the last 10 years. So before it used to be like 2/3 of hybrids. Now it's probably only 60% and 40%. So it's growing more and more our consumption in terms of vinifera. So I think we're drinking better now. That's a thing. But it's still it's early days. I think Brazil's got so much in terms of how to. And you mentioned rightly. I mean, tax is the major issue comparing to India. I think we are in the same sort of boat.
Yeah, and then just to complement what you said, that's one of the reasons, I guess, is having even more room for us to grow, because people drinking hybrid or between Lambruscan Americans, like if we have this a little game in Brazil, lots of people don't understand because we don't have this in Australia, but that's something we have a lot of grape juice and things like that as well. And we have these grapes for grape juice, and sometimes they use for wines as well. And then that's people started to understand quality, and people understand what is actually fine wine means, because that's how we can differentiate in Brazil. Like a table wine is actually means from hybrid grapes, and the other word we use is fine wine is more vitivinífera. So that's something we use in Brazil. Lots of people don't understand that, but that's how we define which one is which. That's
Correct.
why I got a fine wines, because everything is not from hybrid kind of grapes. We call fine wines in Brazil. And then that's such a complicated for people to understand outside of here, because everyone, like when you start to translate, it's like just became like a big mess that they had. But I think it's why we still have potential to grow that, because more people moving to the fine wines, get that vitivinífera, these numbers is gonna grow even further, because like you still have a room as well for people to drink better or drinking wines from vitivinífera grapes, fine wines, how we call it in Brazil.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, there are two misinterpretations in terms of law in Brazil. One is the fine wines that you just mentioned, which is if you call like, how is the fine wines market in Brazil? It's hard to say, because we don't call it fine wines. We call super premium wines or whatever it is. So we don't have a fine wine market in terms of using the word fine wines. The other one is suave, which is we use here as a off dry wine, but it's a kind of texture as well. So it's a soft texture. So that's two terminations that actually don't make any sense in Brazil. And on top of that, it's a market that is kind of like understanding the hybrid words. So people are trying to make better wines with hybrid, but I think not in Brazil. I think Brazil will decrease, but in places like us suffering quite heavily with climate, especially with mildew, oildew on very wet climates and stuff like that, we might see more hybrids coming up. So it's a kind of like whatever happened in the 70s, especially in Germany. We're probably going to see a little bit with the Piwi grapes. I mean, the Piwi grapes is a big thing. It's like innovation that will probably play a part a little bit in places like have a very very prone for problems, prone for problems. So we'll see.
Yeah, I see. But I think Brazil compared how was 10 years ago when I left to Brazil. Oh, no, I think 30 years now. Sorry, I need to update my my speech. I guess it was like it's much different. Remember, like when I left Brazil to go to Argentina, it's so hard to find wines. And then I'm from the northeast of Brazil, and there you can imagine like the wines on the table wasn't the jar, was two wines on for you to choose. One of them was Marco James. You probably know that. People probably listening to us probably have absolutely no idea. I'm not sure how
Yeah.
famous it is James outside of Brazil. But that's what the ones we'd be able to find easily outside of, when you go to restaurants. And northeast of Brazil, we still have over a million of people, it's considered a small city, capital, but still over a million. So and today we come back that it's completely different reality. We have plenty restaurants with plenty wine choices, and we see people actually drink wine. I went to São Paulo, went to the wine bars every day, and then I see like completely different what was like 30 years ago, and then that's what gives me. That's why I want to come back. That's why I wanted to do some things with Brazil, just because I feel like it's gonna happen something. It has that feeling. You see me, we're moving faster.
No,
I know it's faster. It's not faster. Can we be able to drink the whole wine have globally to go to Brazil? That's never going to happen. But we have opportunities in emerging markets, and I think Brazil is the one.
yeah. No. You're absolutely right. I think you mentioned a point there. I think for whoever consumes wines, I think we are in a very good spot. The wine consumers, they are not the ones they consume 2.7 liters a head. These guys, they consume a very good kind of like 40, 50 liters, which is a good number for Portugal, Spain, and all the sort of high consuming countries. I think the problem that we have is the base of the pyramid. So it's where people cannot attract wine or cannot find wine. So the distribution in our country is a problem. So we don't have surface for wine. So like you get large country like I would say probably Argentina, you have wine everywhere in terms of the surface. In Brazil, you don't have the same distribution, and also you don't have at the lower end price point. For us to have an idea, normally our price it's fairly more expensive than anywhere else in the world. We had a research here recently, a Chilean brand. They compare the price point in a retail shelf, in a supermarket shelf, in 4 different countries: in the US, in Chile, the local market, in Brazil, and somewhere in Europe. And Brazil was the most expensive retail price all of them all. So we have these two things that it's probably, that's why it's probably going to be taking a little longer than actually, because some people say the cultural aspects that the Brazil doesn't have the culture of drinking wine. So New Zealand didn't have in the 70s or in the 60s. Probably the Chileans probably was not high consuming country as well. So even South Africans, I mean, the culture you build up, but you have to have access. So, and then when you have like, as you mentioned, well, São Paulo is probably the leading consumption city, and also the economical city, and 20 million people. That's where 50% of consumption is based on, even more. Sometimes some numbers come up every year, so that sometimes 50, 55%. So that pole of consumption, it is not mature, but they know what they're drinking. They are, if you pick now the best restaurants in São Paulo, sometimes Michelin star, sometimes Bib Gourmand, sometimes in the 50 best scenario, all the sommeliers, they are buying or they are into whatever is a modern time, whatever is contemporary. So wines that they have some sort of a freshness, acidity, a vertical, a lees aging, natural, or whatever they expect of low intervention. So that sort of pole is covered in terms of wines and selling wines and having sommeliers or having at least wine waiters prepared to serve people. But this is a small part of Brazil. This is a good part of a wine scene for us. So as you mentioned, like you went to a lot of wine bars and all of the wine bars prepared to serve you. But this is a tiny little part of what we can do in terms. So we need more surface. We need work on the base part of the pyramid.
Yeah, and I think having so many companies doing that as well, like wine.com, is doing
Right.
try to convert to think. I think that's pretty much what they try to do. And I think if people like yourself, it just to try to after they became wine drinkers, you just start to talk to them. So it's all working together. It's like all the business. We need to have a business to for the gaps. We need to try to find those segments. I think that's just the best strategy. And I think in the wine industry, have been so much in thinking one type of customer, the ideal profile. And I think we need to learn it from the crisis we have now, how we can find the different profiles, how we can engage with different people, what we need to do to be different. And that's pretty much like, and then Brazil is such a no place for so many. And I think one of the most comments I get about Brazil is because the language, we just speak Portuguese, and it seems like
No,
for we write is in Portuguese. All the songs we have is in Portuguese. It's just we pretty much a Portuguese speak 100%. And then have you because you have been overseas and you can speak a fluent English and you can make this chat work. But how many people actually in Brazil don't speak English? It's a very small amount who can speak in English in Brazil, and that's I think stop as well for lots of the information from outside to come to Brazil and they try to make things work. And I think we need more engaging on that perception as well. We need to talk the language what most people speak, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely spot on. I mean, it's the language is an issue, and that's why Portugal is between the second or third country in terms of wine consumption in Brazil, because Portuguese, because of the language. So also the two main reasons why Portugal is so strong. Portuguese wines are so strong in Brazil. I think Portugal, it's the main market for Portugal is the UK and Brazil now. Portugal is massive in Brazil, and the reason for is language, and also the Portuguese brands, wineries, and government, Wines of Portugal, Vini Portugal, invest massively in education in Brazil. So they do lots of events, they do lots of training, and this is not now. This is about since when I moved back to Brazil. Since I moved back in Brazil in 2013, I always seen why Portugal makes so many things here and doesn't do anything in the UK, and that's what pays off, and that's why it puts Portugal in a set. Portugal was the only country that had a growth in Brazil last year, and is growing again this year. So it's a constantly growth, but that's because they're investing and they're putting a lot of effort in terms of connecting with people, engaging people with a lot of B2C events, a lot of consumer events. And you're right. I mean, and mention again, this is a small part of consumption in Brazil. The people that actually move the wine consumption, those people actually do speak English and they are covered. But the problem that we have is exactly what you mentioned. The people that wine.com is talking to, Evino is talking to, Ambev is talking to, that mass of people, they are not into the language. And how we communicate with them, how wines of the US, wines of Australia, wines of South Africa, wines of Italy speak with that sort of database. And you need a translator, you need a communicator. And that's why these companies have been playing a very big part on that sort of base scenario, and rightly so. I mean, that's why they were the companies that had most growth in the last 10 years. Ambev is no different. In 1 year of operation, they became the fourth biggest importer for Argentinian wine. They only have one winery. They bought a winery in Argentina, and they only have this winery called Dante Rubino, and they became the fourth biggest importer of Argentinian wine in Brazil with 1 year of operation. It's huge. It's massive. So the potential that we have to reach and have the surface, it's there. It just needs to kind of like get the right vehicles.
Yeah, I agree, and then that's probably the something I always try to talk about. It like that's it's beautiful to have more Australian wines in Brazil and to be able to build that connection. But at the same time, if we don't really bring any brand awareness or something like that, it's very hard to
Yeah.
to make it
Australia,
true. So because Portugal do all these things like for the last 10 years, and you see like the results, but I feel like people want to sell it without to have a
uh,
strategic plan, and that's it's I think that's the hardest way to sell things. I think it's
I couldn't agree more with you. I think we starting a campaign really strong about it. For you to have an idea, Australia today is 0.3 of the market share in Brazil. Is the 10th biggest country. Is behind South Africa. Is behind the US. Is behind the Uruguay. And it's a market of only $1.5 million. So it's tiny, and there's so much potential, so much things to do in terms of the learning curve and teaching and events, connecting with the culture. We have a very similar culture in terms of party, happiness, sports, beer, barbecue. I mean, we have so many connections. I've been to Australia 3 times and went to the wineries, and it's so easy to connect. The culture is so easy to kind of like engage and having a big time. Say, I mean, for me, it's. I think the time will come. I think we haven't done enough in terms of. I think you've done a brilliant job. You have done a fantastic event last year. We are keen on doing similar things as well. I mean, we brave enough. We are starting with 5 different wineries from Australia this year. We have already launched Jim Barry, which is brilliant wines to have in a portfolio. We also have Tournon from Chapoutier. We are launching Yarra Earring, to me one of the hot spots in Australia these days. I mean, it's the wines are. I mean, I'm dreaming to get a wine. The wines are about to be released on the port. So I want to do a lot of blind tastings with top end wineries from France or from wherever in the world, and really surprise people to see what the quality is about. Also, Unicuzelo, it's a kind of like a low intervention type of operation. So we're kind of really keen to launch that as well. So yeah, I mean, we're trying to really kind of talk and get the quality on. We even kind of are looking to have lower margins on the wines from Australia to get the category going. I think
yeah.
that's important as well from the importers to engage in that sort of sector. I can't think of having the same margins compared to Chile and Argentina. Is unfair. I mean, it's an unfair operation. So we're really keen to really get a category going, because there's so much to talk about. There's so much to. I mean, the wines in Australia these days, they are in such a high quality level that to me, to talk about it, to talk about the regions, it's fantastic, and get more people there as well. I mean, if I ask all the top sommeliers in Brazil if they had been to Australia, I'll probably hear that 90-something% they've never been. Yeah, it's far away, but instead of they going like 3 times, 4 times to Chile a year, they go once for Australia, and they cover like a beautiful wine region. They don't need to do what I did, which was 11 regions in 10 days. But
Oh my God. That's gonna be very interesting.
No, those were the wines of Australia. They made me work that time. I mean, I used to be buying the UK, and we did like lots of traveling, lots of small planes from one region to the other. It was amazing. It was brilliant. It was really nice.
But yeah, I guess like what I see like the difference Portugal it is. I didn't realize Portugal. I knew Portuguese wines was so much in Brazil, but I didn't realize it was the biggest market for Portugal as well. I thought maybe they have the biggest market elsewhere, like US or something. That's just something that really surprised me. They investing in Brazil, and they actually now then then they actually make things actually happen.
Just to mention the potential, when I mentioned that Australia is $1.5 million, Portugal is $70 million a year that was imported to Brazil last year.
So that's
which was a bad year. So it's probably going to go to 80 to 90 this year.
I like to actually put the dot points because
Yeah.
that's going to be my next question. Yeah, so you see like so much like potential have for other countries and brands to building things in Brazil, but it is like I try to do some research as well. I have been engaged with Brazil market in Australia, wines to Brazil market for the last 4 or 5 years, and I did some research and then like to just see in the Facebook where I have like plenty of wine consumers, and I think it was about 400 people actually answer that questionnaire. And then
Wow.
I asked it just like if they have any contact with Australian wines at all, what they think, if they get invited for any, event or have been involved in an event. And it was insane because the answers was, I didn't even know Australian wines, or something like, no, I never heard about an Australian event like in Brazil at all, or I have never had the opportunity to try Australian wines, and it somehow was a consumer space. It was not wine professional base. It was like a groups. I just put a discussion up for 10 or 11 Facebook groups like 3 or 4 years ago. So like just the big groups of whiny people kind of thing, and I just let people answer, just analyze the answers after. And I just make these questions like, why is the problem with Australian wines? People know about it. People don't know about it. They have something's happened there. Why? Because when you come to Australia, just have this feeling. It's like, oh, that's so good, like this magical, I don't know, spirit. It's just contaminating you. You just wanted to be like, talk about Australian wines, because when you come to Brazil and visit Brazil, that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I end up to do. It's like, why people don't get engaged with? Why people don't? And then I just discovered sometimes that probably one of the reasons is just because they have absolutely no idea what Australian wines is about it. And for just imagine for consumers, if they don't come in natural in their head about Australia make wine, then it's not something they go into the shop and is actually going looking for a specific one they don't even know they actually exist. I think the problem we need to fix is at the beginning, like we building a market to people know about wine, but Chile, Argentina, Portugal, we're just coming, like go to the battle with everything they can to be able to grow the market. And I think any market, for any major market beyond Brazil, we need to not expect it just to, selling the wines to the importer and they go, my work is done. So now we need to build the demand, because if there's no demand, there's not going to be another order, and it's not going to be grow the market. It's I think this work we need to do. It's a long term. It's a long term process. It's a long term job.
Yeah, I think you touch a point that to me is absolutely vital when I choose a winery to work with. We call ourselves a sort of an agency house, so we're not necessarily a wine distributor. We are an agency house. So we whenever we get an agency on, a producer, we need to look after them, but as a team, so as a part of a partnership. So we either do a brand plan for this winery, or we do a brand plan for the category, such as Australia, for example. We have a brand plan for the category. So what is the brand plan? But basically, what are we going to do? What sort of activations we're going to do a year? And the wineries, they have to be on board. They have to be engaged. You mentioned perfectly, if they do one sell and they don't engage, if they're not engaged with what are we going to do throughout the year, they're going to be, basically, it's not going to be a sellout. So our main challenges in Brazil at the moment is selling out. I think probably worldwide, but it's not to get the wines into the supermarkets or the wine shops or the restaurants. It's how actually to move them out with such a huge amount of competition that we have throughout the world. At the moment, it's 750 importers in Brazil. Well, now it's 700. It used to be 743. Now it's 702. So it had a little decrease, which is good. But 700 importers for a tiny market like ours, it's unbalanced. Simple as that. We had this huge thing in the last 10 years that people are seeing more wines around and say like, well, I love wines. Why do I? My friend wants to have some wine, so I'm going to sell to him. So I'm going to start importing myself. I went to this winery that I visited. So a lot of wine, a lot of importers has started. So, but 30%, the 70% of the market, it's only 30 importers. So 30 importers in Brazil does around 70% of the market. So there are a lot of importers only kind of putting product in the market. So making a little wine, a little sort of a decision saturation for the consumers. And not necessarily engaging and working the brand. So for me, it's I'm investing a lot in marketing. So having a strong marketing team here to be able to deliver brand plans, to be able to do wine events, master classes, wine trainings, wine dinners, wine trips. And that's, I think, the problem that we have with Argentina and Chile. They have a much closer relationship. It's so easy. In 4 hours, I'm in Santiago. I'm quite close to Buenos Aires, so quite close to Mendoza. So it's hard to go to Australia. But it's not hard to do events. It's not hard to do lives. It's not hard to do sort of a connection online. Tasting, wine training. We have a problem in Brazil as well. That's sampling. So we don't get samples throughout. So we need to pay for samples. But it has to be put on A&P. It has to be put on the price of the bottle. So if it doesn't have this sort of engagement, it's going to be hard to build a category.
Yeah. And then what's you think is going to be the best way to approach and to go to the next level for Australia wines, because that's topic, but I want to ask you as well for other brands and for other markets. It just is, I say Australia because that's what we have in common. That's how we became our relationship became more stronger. But I wanted to know as well, not just Australia, we started with Australia, but as well like other brands around the world. What is the thing they need to think before they actually engage with the importer to get the wines in Brazil, how they can make that plan work for them, and because we already know have potential. It's not going to happen. We're not going to take the whole wines of the world and to put in Brazil, but we can definitely making a difference for lots of markets.
Yeah, I think depends on the size of the winery, obviously, but everyone's got a sort of strategy and demand. But I think for Brazil, to me, it's a long-term project that has to be aligned in terms of a sustainable growth. I think it's a country that will keep growing, but in a slow pace. It's not going to be like China did 10 years ago. It's not going to be like an emerging market that suddenly really shoot off. It's going to be a slow, steady growth that has to be with brand building. I would look for an importer that builds brand other than have like massive off-trade deals, because this will have a huge problem in price protection and you're never going to build a brand. And also going to look in an importer that are kind of like omni-channel. With this huge open of digital, it's going to be probably all of how it was in mature markets like was in the UK, for example, 5-7 years ago, before COVID and before the digital transformation, where you had importers segmented for each channel. So imported for B2C, imported for off-trade, imported for Italian wines. Now you see more and more the companies having a little bit more flexibility and operating in all channels. It's simple. We had to do this transformation in Berkman, not only in Brazil, but also in the UK. So we now have a channel segmented for the off-trade. We also have off-trade deals that you can import directly. We just operate as a trader. We opened recently the B2C channel. It's small, but attends whatever we need to do, especially with the fine wines. We have a very strong sort of their own trade. We work with restaurants. So it's all about services now. With the amount of wines being produced and with a tiny amount of consumption or with a decreased consumption worldwide, I think to me is all about service now. Whoever's going to operate a high-end service, whoever's going to operate an educational process service, whoever's going to help the sellout of the clients, it's probably going to be on the front line, I would guess. But it's not easy because this is expensive. Doing that is an expensive thing to operate. So it's how to use artificial intelligence to build it up, how to use tools to help that out, how to use good people to be around you, training, internal training. So it's all of these will probably count.
And what about on the count, other governments? Because you mentioned wines of Portugal doing lots of events in Brazil. There's other places around the world is actually investing in Brazil as the wines of Portugal.
Yeah, Wines of Chile had turned most of the investment, which was Wines of Chile is not in a great moment because of so many events that they had recently. But I think Wines of Chile was one of the ones that they directed a little bit the money investment around the world to Brazil recently. And Argentina woke up for that sort of end as well. I hear that Italy has started to kind of getting their eyes in Brazil as well, but because Italy is so spread, the operation, they sell so much to the US, to the UK, that they can't really drive all the attention to once. I think what they're feeling is the UK drop and the Chinese market completely fall out. I think they will look into countries like Brazil and India to be. I mean, again, IWCR. So no IWCR. I think it was Wine Next. They sold an event recent, an article that was about a couple of days ago, I think, mentioning that Brazil, India, and the US will be the top 3 countries of growth in the next 5 years. We'll see. Hopefully they will be right.
You're in the right place then. You choose well.
I hope so.
Really.
I hope so. 10 years down the line, I hope so. I hope now it's going to finally shoot off. Since when I'm back here, everybody's saying, "Oh, Brazil is going to be the next big thing." I think it will be. I think we'll have. I mean, we predicted a growth this year. Not Bergman is growing because we're growing from a small base. So it's expected to grow. But the market, generally speaking, it's expected to have a growth of 16%, and first semester it wasn't that great, especially because of our winter that never came.
was amazing because I was there and I can't complain. It was nice and sunny. So
yeah, exactly. I'm like that as well. So everybody at home are like. People that work with us and yeah, it's great, it's hot, it's not cold. I said, no, we want to code because, and that's again comes to a market that is not completely mature yet. We are a seasonal drinkers in terms of wine. When it's cold, drink red wine. When it's hot, drink beer and caipirinha. So it's actually a good thing for us to have those spells of hot weather because it's forcing people culturally to drink wines. White, rosé, and sparkling. So it's actually not a bad thing in a long term. In a short term, it's bad because we're not doing the numbers, so we're not consuming as much as we should have. But in a long term, we're kind of being forced to drink whites and reds and roses whites, roses, and sparkling, and therefore we will learn in the future to have that going.
I just want to touch in a topic. Everyone's talking about it, and at least here in Australia, and even in the groups we have, in the WhatsApp groups, we're always talking about it. And I forgot to talk about this specific topic when I was in Brazil with you, in the last 2 times we have been together. But it was about the health, how people actually, we're all talking about wine is not healthy anymore. So how Brazilians actually looking for that? Because I did have that feeling when I was there. When I come back to Australia, everyone's talking about those things. Is oh my God, they were feeling wine healthy and blah blah blah. But I don't know. I didn't have that like people around me didn't was talking about that. I don't know if it just was
Yeah.
my bubble or is something actually different happening.
We are always a little late than the wines market. The wines more markets that are a bit more mature, such as Australia, for example. So we will get into that, I think, very shortly. But there's a company here. It's a golf company. I think it's called Abratel, or I think it's Anatel or Abratel or whatever it is. Abrabi, sorry. And they do a lot of very good work on general issues. They did a very strong work in terms of smuggling wine, which is happening a lot from Argentinian wine smuggling through the
Yeah.
board. That's big issue at the moment for us. But they did a very strong work about the subject of wine and health, and in fact, the topic was one that grew the most in the last semester, and the people talking about it. If I'm not mistaken, last month was 1,800 mentions about bad drinking or about. I can send you as well the material they did. It was fantastic. Like, I didn't know there was like 1,800 mentions on Twitter, Google, Instagram, whatever, talking about health and how drinks, not wine, but how beverage was bad for health. So yeah, I think it's coming. I think it's coming for all senses. I mean, OMS, it's really strong on that. Since COVID. I think the governments, for them to tax, the easiest thing to do is to tax in alcohol and tobacco because it's bad for health. But I think we need to come back. We need to. I think the governmental bodies, we need to come back with stronger campaigns talking about the cultural aspects of wine, how mental health, how wine is good for mental health, how wine is good for community, for history, for agriculture. There's so many good topics that we can engage in and fight back this nonsense about uh, uh, alcohol is bad for health. I mean, this is obvious, and we need to carry on talking about moderation. Moderation is, but the problem is they're attacking moderation too. They're talking about stop drinking at all, and that's to me is quite dangerous. That comes together with this structure reduction of alcohol or structure reduction of wine consumption in the world.
Do you think it's the name being attacked? So, but as I know you say beverage, but I do believe wine has been attacked more. I don't see as much magazines of people talk about it's all wine in health. It's wine in health. They don't say gin, or
Yeah,
they don't
I
say vodka. They don't say any other categories. It's wine. I'm not sure if that's because the whining have been on the past. People say it was good for your heart, and then these people just coming back and say like, "Look, we need to change things." It's just a very great topic to be able just to finalize all meaning all things today. But yeah, I just wanted to get that because I don't feel it's getting in Brazil yet, and I see if you can avoid to get on that point.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe because we are so inserted into wine world that we only see wine, but I think that's going to spirits as well. I think that's spirits is being damaged, is being hammered on that too. I think we need to look into a little bit wider. I think that the article and the material that Abrabi did, I think shows a little bit about everything. So I probably can share with you and you have a look as well. That talks a lot about spirits, quite heavily on that as well.
That's great
But
information.
but you're right. But you're right. I think we don't speak as much as you do in the UK and there and in the US. But it will happen at some point.
Great. And then tell me, I always try to get the three things for finalize the podcast. The three advices you wanted to give for for people, for producers or people looking for understand this Brazil market, how they can, because I think that's another challenging, and I don't know if I told in this podcast already, was just before I record, um, we found that when you post something about Brazil, I get lots of engagement and lots of private message, and not only from Australia, I actually get from other countries as well, because it's like, I love your content about Brazil, because I don't know anything about Brazil. I have a very big struggle to get information about Brazilian market in English, because everything is, it seems like you just speak Portuguese there. And then, it's been harder for lots of people to understand the market. Of course, they have lots of people like, like research is doing about the Brazil market and show like the results and the numbers and the growth in the market. But I think like understand the culture, understand what Brazil like, what Brazilians like, you understand what's about Brazil, like why we are smile and happy people. It's not just me, guys. It's whole Brazil is pretty much more like that. But what's the culture there? What's this making people understand what's the Brazilian market beyond of the numbers they can actually read in English? Because I don't think beyond that they can get more information. So what's the three final comments you wanted to give to us about Brazil?
I think first of all, I mean, look for the professionalism in Brazil. There are some very good, willing professionals that wants to make wine work as a category and not necessarily surfing the wave about wine status and being part of the wine trend per se. I mean, I think there are some very, very professionals and people that are fighting for the category. I think try to find partners that have this mindset, people that have as a mission try to develop the wine trade, because there are so much development to be made. I mean, I think this is to me one of the try to find people that share the same sort of mission and values. I think this is really important. Second, think about brand building, thinking about service, thinking about, I mean, there's too many wines around, there are too many labels available. What are we making different to have our wines to be noticed? What are we doing to have our wines to be selling out, to be moving around? I think this is, to me, at least that's what we do. I mean, we're not going to get a container and throw in an off-trade supermarket and put everything in price. There are some deals that we kind of need to do that, but mostly I think we are brand builders, and I think it's important to have people that think in that sort of direction. The wine category and industry, generally speaking, doesn't have much money for marketing. This is established compared to luxury, compared to cosmetics, compared to clothes or design or whatever it is. Wine is known by not having much in terms of money for investment, in terms of marketing and brand building. But maybe it's time to relook in that sort of scenario, especially with people drinking less and drinking better. So having that. And the third one, it's time, guys. It's time to look into our country. It's time to look into our world, into our land. We destroyed too much. So for people producing wine, looking to the land and looking to all the sort of things that people are talking about. I'm not here to the sustainability part, the regeneration, viticulture, the whole thing of emission of CO2 and carbon capture and so on and so forth, and not only producers. I mean, this is us as well. People who are selling wines. We sell throughout the whole of Brazil. We need to look at the carbon emission of our cars, of our trucks, of the planes that we take to do master classes and workshops and so on and so forth. So absolutely everyone, we are in a huge problem in front of us. A lot of fires around, lots of hails out of date coming out. So yeah, I think it's time. So
Yeah, no, thank you. That's amazing. It's amazing to be able to talk to you and to give these informations about Brazil and to talk about, what's our country have the different what the growth looks like. It's not gonna be a magic pill solution for for the wine industry. That's for sure. That is a good, just to make sure people understand. It is a brand building, is a long term strategy. It's not a magic pill, but definitely there is potential there, and I think
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
different to them.
And for the Australians, believe in us, we're gonna have we need to move that 0.3% of market share, and we need to have the Australian wines and have the Brazilians to know the Australian wines and the Australian culture. I think that sort of connection is necessary, is needed, is late, and I think we have quite a lot to do together. So it's we will carry on growing, not as fast as we expected, but is steady and is safe.
Yeah, it's just keeping going, growing. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you,
You know
Brie. Thank you.
how I admire you and for your work you have been doing in Brazil. You already told you that I can talk to you for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. It's just because I found
Yeah.
you so incredible. But thank you so much for your time and for to give this knowledge to all of us and to give to your your expertise and to share all these insights about Brazil with us today. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Brie, was fantastic. Always great chatting. Yeah, absolutely. I keep myself available if you have any questions and anything to know or to get to know about Brazil and whatever I can help with. I'm completely leaving myself available here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.